All right, today is Tuesday, the 10th of January, and we're going to do a few things today, but I'm still going to try to make sure I go till 10 o'clock and ideally less than that. You've got some handouts on your desk. The first one looks like this. It's on the front and the back, and it says AA version 1 and AA version 2. And it's two different ways that All-American app can be created. And I've also went in last night and did about a half an hour long video where I did both of them. But I am going to do them both for you right now, and I'm going to follow the steps on here, but I'm going to do them quickly. All right, so if you want to go back and redo those on your own, you'll be able to. You don't have to turn this in or anything. All right, so that's the first thing. You've got this, and you've got the 4 lines of code. That's the thing that's right underneath it. Fortunately, I left the color part on the printer, so you've got it in color, and I hate doing that because that's wasting color cartridge. Then the next two, I'm not going to go over it all, but those are the code for both a GUI version of a calculator and a non-GUI version of the calculator. It's pretty much what I showed you yesterday. I forgot to print out hard copies of those, so I did them by scratch, but they pretty much look that way. If you ever watch the tapes, I don't know, some people have told me in the past this kind of thing is funny, but whenever the heat goes on in the apartment that I'm in, it's so loud it rattles, so I have to stop. So I sit there and you hear me talking, and I'll say, oh, the heat's on again. So I pause it, and then when the heat goes off again, I start up. So if you're wondering why, that is why. But like I said, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to get into Visual Studio. And I'm going to start up and create 2 projects based on what we have right here on these steps right in front of you. It's the last time I'm going to do something like this. All right. So File, New Project. I'm just going to call this AAV1 because I've already got one with that name with AA version 1. So there's the first one. And, well, unfortunately, I don't want that. I created it as a console app. Could do it as a console app, but I really don't want to do that. Console apps are basically set up so with a console app you are not going to be doing any GUI-ness. And since I am, I'm just going to get rid of that. All right, but I do want to show you that. It brings up an important concept that when you do this, when you do a File, New, Project, if you choose Windows Format, that's a GUI app. Does that make sense? All right. If you choose Console app, that's a non-GUI app. All right. And you're going to see those as we go on in here. The WPF is, I don't remember what the P is, but it's Windows something Foundation. We're not going to work with that. We work with the ASP.NET web app in fall. The other ones we're not even going to touch much. All right. But I want it to be Windows Forms app. And I'm going to call this again AAV1. All right, so again, I'm following the steps on the front page that you see right here, and literally I'm going to spend about 5 minutes doing this. So the first thing I want to do is, as I've told you before, I don't like gray in here for the color of the form. So I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to change the background color right away. You change it to anything you want, but since we're using red, white, and blue, I'll tell you what, I'll use this green. All right. Then, as it says there, resize the form. So I did that, changed the default background. Okay, they say do it to yellow. So there it's yellow. Good enough. All right, then add a single button to the form. So this is going to do it a button at a time. So I'm going to add a button to the form. And again, please be cognizant of this fact. A couple of you have been bit by this already. After you add the button, the next thing you really should do is go in and change the name of it. So I'm going to call this button red, and I'm going to change the text to red. Now right now the program won't do anything when I run it except the button will look pressed in. All right. So I'm going to double click on the button and let me cut that down a little bit. In fact, let me get rid of this. Move this over. All right. Now what I showed you yesterday is we said this dot back color and we said equals system dot drawing dot color dot red, which is totally fine. But please look on the screen here. At the top, we already have using system.drawing. You see that? So since we have that in there, we don't have to say system.drawing. All you have to say is color.red. We can still say it, but it's redundant to say that. So that's all I've added has been this so far. I'm going to click my button to save all, run the program, and click, and you see it turns red. I mean, that should be pretty obvious. I chose something like this because I want it to be obvious what's going on here. All right, and I wanted it to be simple, yet, like I said, be obvious. I'm going to stretch this out just a little bit there, put it like that. And again, remember that there are different ways that you can come in here and you can create buttons. If I bring my toolbox in, all right, I can do that and just drag a button out there, and that'll work fine. Or I can go to my button tool here and just double click it and put it out there. Or I can take an existing button, do a Control C, Control V, and copy it. Any of those ways work, and none of those ways is preferable to any other way. You should just do it whatever way feels comfortable to you. I forgot to at the beginning here. I don't like to have anything named like Form 1 or anything 1, so I didn't change the name of my form. So I'm going to change this to Form AA for All American version 01. All right, and again, I can change my text also on here so that it says All American App version 01. And you see how that changes up here. All right, so I've got my red button. Now I'm going to come here, and the first thing I want to do is change the name to button white. And then I want to change the text to white. And I'll double click on it, and I can just copy the text that I had up above. But this time it'll be color.white with a semicolon on the end. I'll do a save all, I'll run it again. Now my red works and my white works. Again, that should be pretty obvious what's going on here. All right? All right, okay. Now, going back and just replicating the same thing. This time I'll come and just drag that button out there. All right, this one I'm going to change the name right away to button blue. And I'm going to change the text on the button to blue. Then I'm going to double click on the button, and hopefully that's still on my clipboard, and it is. So color.blue, semicolon, save, run it again. I now have my red, my white, and my blue. So the only thing that's left is to come in and add one last button, and that button will be for my exit. All right, so I'll change the name right away to button exit. Oops. Yeah, that's what happens when you do something you shouldn't. You get messages like that. So that should be button exit. And I want the text on there to say exit. And remember with that one, when I double click on it, I don't want it to say this dot back color or anything like that. I just want it to say application dot exit. And that is a method, so I put the parens after it. Save, run it, red, white, blue, exit. That all make sense? You should be able to by now, granted this is only day 2, but you should be able to replicate that in 5 to 10 minutes. All right, now I'm not going to do the other version because it's the same thing. I just changed the order. All right, but it's a good test for yourself. There's no problem using a piece of paper like this. And again, if you try it at home or whatever, and you run into any kind of problems, this one right here, and it's about a half an hour long, is me last night going through and doing both versions that I gave you. All right? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go over the test review, but before we do, I want to show you these other 2 programs very quickly. I'm not going to spend any time on them, but there's a couple things on them I wanted to show you. All right, and the first one is the calculator GUI. The stuff that's in here It's all stuff that's in later chapters. So, I'm going to quickly go over it with you, but I wanted to show you a couple things that are in here so you see them. You'll notice that the interface looks a bit different. I changed it up a little from yesterday. I made it look, I thought, a little bit nicer. You may or may not agree. All right, but a couple things. If you look up on the screen here, listen to my voice, but look up on the screen. The first thing is, once you get your interface kind of looking the way you want it to look, like this, my recommendation, you don't have to do this, but my recommendation is that you hold down on your left mouse button and you do what's called lasso the controls. Everybody understands that, correct? All right. After you do that, you can either go over to where it says locked here and set it to true, or you can right mouse click and choose lock controls. Once you do that, these can no longer move. All right. And because it's kind of a pain in the butt when you've got a nice interface and then you accidentally move a bunch of stuff. You can do Control Z to back it up, but that's even a pain. So now if you notice, I can't move any of these controls. I'm trying to flick these and move them across, and I can't do that. That makes sense? You don't have to do that, but you find in most applications you will want to do that once you get an interface looking the way you want it to look. All right. You'll notice that it's possible on the face of a button to not just put text, but you can also put a symbol, and that's what I did here. For addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulo. And then the other ones are clear, exit, and help. I'm going to go over those in just a second. One more thing I want to show you. The way that this is set up, you may or may not be able to tell, but notice I'm going to hit the tab key and watch what happens. Tab, 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 tab. By default, everybody knows what by default means, right? Unless told otherwise. The tab order is set by the order in which you put the components on the screen. That's not the order I put them. If you want to change the tab order, and why would you do that? Some people, especially if they've been using computers for a while, they're used to tabbing their way around. So if you want to set the tab order at any time, I recommend you put the cursor in where you want the first tab to be set to, and then you go down to View and you choose Tab Order. Now, is that pretty obvious what's going on there? And I can click at any one of those and change the order either manually, or if I click here, for example, if I were to click here, I'm not going to, but if I click there, that would change to 0. Does that make sense? Once you get it done, you just do another View, Tab Order, and it goes away. Just kind of a quick little thing, just so you know that. Yes, sir?
Do they all have to be tabbed?
No. A very good question. Do they all have to be tabbed? Not only do they not all have to be tabbed, if you look up on the screen, it is not possible in a program to tab to a label. Labels cannot get what's called the focus. I just did all of them, but I did not have to. No, it's a good question. And this right here, this is a text box, but I took the property on it that's called read only, and I set it to true. When you've got a text box that's read only, it acts like a label because you can't change the value when the program's running. The difference is you can, C-A-N, you can tab to a read-only field, like a read-only text box. All right. The other thing I want to show you, and before I run this, by default, when you put this stuff in there, what happens is, if I click on the form, there's a thing down here that's called Start Position. And I changed it to center screen, but by default, it's set to Windows default location. That's what it's set to. So notice now, when I run this, what happens? Program works okay, but see where it starts? All right, I don't like that. So I'm going to go to that start location again. So I'm going to click on here, go to start position, and change it to center screen. All right, and see the difference? It's not that big a thing. I wouldn't take off if you didn't do that. But you want your app, ideally, if you're going to run something, to run right in the middle. What bugs people sometimes when they do this is, okay, I get that, Jeff. Now you've got it in the center of the screen, but I still got that other one behind me, and I don't like that. Well, if that bothers you, then when you go to run your program, don't run it from the design mode, run it from code mode. And then you see it right in the middle. It's all a matter of personal taste and personal preference. All right? Two more things to explain to you. just to show you this, if I put in 45 and I put in 8, I can add them, I can subtract them, I can multiply them, divide them, do modulo, which is remainder. I can clear, which clears all the fields, and it puts the cursor back in this one. I can exit. Notice what I did, I added some code there. So it just doesn't do an application.exit, it asks first. This is called a message box right here. And the message box has got 4 components. The text you want it to have, which is quit the program now, the title, which is exit program, the buttons, if you decide to put them, and I've got yes, no buttons, and the icon. Now, I don't expect you to remember that, but you're going to see it in a later chapter. So I just decided to show it to you right now. And I broke my own rules in here because typically when I put a message box in like that, I take the title and I put it in all caps. You don't have to do that. Doesn't make the program run any better. All right? But you'll notice if I click exit, now that is in all caps. I like doing that. You don't have to. All right? And the other thing that's in there is I've got a help. This is another message box that I put in, or a message box.show. This is a simple GUI calculator program. All right? 2 more things to show you, then we're out of here. One is, and I've started showing it to you already, but whether you realized it or not, but when I show the answer, here we are. When I show the answer, I've got in here F2. That's formatting. The F doesn't stand for formatting. It means it's floating point, 2 decimal places. So I've got each answer in there to 2 decimal places. Because if I put in there like 37 and 3, I don't want the answer to be like 12.33333333. I want it to just be 12.33. All right, so I did that. That's one thing. Last thing to show you on this one, I'm going to go back to design mode, is there are a couple settings that you can set if you want to. If you look up in the properties window, I'm right here. There's something called the accept button. That's the button that will automatically be invoked if you just hit the enter key. I decided that if I put in 2 values here and I hit the enter key, by default, I want to add them. Okay? There's also one, if you go scroll down a little further, that's called cancel button. That's the one that if I hit the escape key, which is in the upper left corner of your keypad, all right, so if I hit the escape key, I'm going to clear. All right? So just to show you those in action, so to speak, there's the program. I'll put in 45 and I'll put in 3 and I'll just hit enter. Notice I'm not using my cursor, it's way over there. And it does the add. And if I just hit escape, it does the clear. Those are just things, and they're all introduced in the book. All right, but I just thought I'd show those to you now. Sometimes people, you get a little ahead of yourself, and I want to do this, I want to do this, yeah, it'll be explained later. No, I want to do it now. So I showed you a couple things that you can do if you'd like to. Does that make sense? All right. Any questions on that? I mean, it was a lot to throw at you in a couple minutes, but I wanted to show it to you. All right. So then what I'd like you to do then, and I'm going to get out of this. Now, everyone should now have that, the test review. All right. Some of you probably got it twice, but that's okay. I'd rather have you get it twice than not at all. Please bring up the test review for Chapter 1. You are taking this when you come in tomorrow. Since it's 40 questions, you can have a maximum of an hour to finish it. I think that would give everybody enough time. So the plan tomorrow is the first thing that we'll do, take the test in here from 8 till 9, break from 9 till about 9:10, then I'm going to lecture on Chapter 2, so you know what's going on. All right? It wasn't here, it was in St. Louis. Yeah, evidently there was somebody walking around the campus that they either had a gun or they thought had a gun. Yeah, it was, but if you know that area, all right, that's how I go there, and it literally is about 1/10 of a mile from the campus. You could walk there in like about a minute. That's how close it is. It was on an intersection, and It was almost right between two of the buildings. So question one on here was, what is machine language? Again, it was the original programming language consisting solely of zeros and ones. These test reviews are probably going to take a little longer because, again, with 40 questions on there as opposed to 30 or 33 like we used to have, all right, I've got all the tests are done for the class. I'm still working on the test on the review sheets. I've given you the first 4 chapters though, so that'll get us going for a while. So C# is what's known as a higher or a high level language. Machine language was the first language. Does all that make sense? That's a lot more information than you would need to put down, but I just want to make sure everybody understood what this was all about. So I would look both at this and I would look at your review questions that we went over yesterday. You know, you spend 10 to 15 minutes on each. That should be a pretty good review for you for the test tomorrow. Questions on this? I know it's a lot to type. Many of them are short, but this one's got quite a bit to type. All right? So, number 2. This is a lot, but just remember this, okay? Camel casing is when you don't capitalize the first letter of the first word, but you capitalize everything else. Pascal, you capitalize every word. So there's grab that example there, and that's the difference. You never have to use either one. It's recommended that you use, for all of your variables, that you use camel casing. Usually for your methods and your classes, you'll use Pascal casing. All right? Okay, number 3. What is C#? That's it. It's a programming language developed as being both object-oriented and component-oriented. 4, what does the return type of void mean? It means the method does not or function does not return a value. Sometimes it's called it's void of a value. Void is a keyword. Remember this last sentence because it's on there too. Void is a C-sharp keyword, so is static. There's a listing, and we went over them yesterday. We looked at them quickly, of about 50 or so C-sharp keywords. Okay, number 5. Why use Visual Studio? Because of the advanced features that it offers, such as syntax coloring and automatic statement completion. This thing, you don't have to write this down, but in the parentheses, it's also known as IntelliSense. All right, you'll typically see it with that name. I don't think IntelliSense is on the test, though, that word. All right, number 6. What is a compiler? A compiler translates your C-sharp into machine language, for lack of better words. Okay. Number 7. What is program logic? You know what logic is. That's the way basically you solve a problem. Number 8, what is debugging? It's finding and removing syntax. They say syntax and logic errors, but it's basically syntax errors in a program. Move in. All right, number 9, a little longer. What is a procedural programming language? Remember, it's procedural versus object oriented. Okay, number 10, what is an identifier? And basically, even more basic than what's written there, it's a user-defined name. It's something you define. Remember we talked about yesterday the rules for the identifiers. They have to start with a letter or else an underscore. Um, then they can contain only letters, underscores, and numbers, and they can't be a keyword. Pardon me? I don't know if you can you use the at symbol if you say so. I didn't think you could, but you're best off just using just letters anyway, and running them together using either Pascal casing if it's a method, or a class, or camel casing if it's a variable name. Number 11, a class is a blueprint that you use to describe or create objects, and an object is an instance of a class. You'll hear that every once in a while, the word object instantiation. That's when you create an object from a class. I hope everybody knows that when I say AKA, that's also known as. See, back in my day, before there was LOL, stuff like that, we used stuff like AKA, or EG for example, or IE for such as. All right, number 12, what is encapsulation? Remember, it's that black box type of theory. If you remember, and I showed you this example the other day, that if I bring up a calculator, right there, that's the interface, right? Once I put in something, if I put in 89 and I hit the square root key, that's the implementation. So the interface is what you show the user. The implementation is how you show it to the user, but it's the code. The implementation is what's encapsulated. All right? So I'm shown the calculator interface, but they don't show me with that calculator how they create the square root, and I don't care. I'm going to try to remember to ask tomorrow before class, are there any questions? So if there is something that you're still not sure about, please ask. Because once I give out the test, because remember the written tests are your computer's shut and you can't use books, can't use notes. Hands-on are the opposite of that. Number 13, what is inheritance? It's also known as extending. It's creating a child class from a parent class. All right, we didn't really go over that yesterday, but does it make sense that if I make a class, if you look up on the screen here, if I make a class and I call it person as an example, and then I make another class called an employee, does it make sense to you that an employee is a person? Does that make sense? So when you use inheritance, it's what's called an is-a or an is-an relationship. Again, an employee is a person, all right? A dog is an animal type of an idea. And we're going to get into that, but not really until like chapters 9 and 10, I think it is. So you won't have to worry about using that stuff for quite a while. Number 14, what is an argument? It's what appears in the parentheses, right? That's an argument. It's the information that a method needs to do its task. I gave you an example of that last semester. If you're my kid and you leave your room filthy and I say clean the room, and you're a little smart aleck, you say what room? So if I say clean the room and then I say you know what room, your bedroom. Bedroom then would be the argument. that clean room would need in order to do its job. All right, number 15. What does the C# right line method do? It displays output on the screen and it moves the cursor to the next line. So it does both of those. Right, not right line, but right just displays output but does not reposition the cursor. We're going to finish this, take a break. We're actually going to do your homework at the end of the chapter. We're going to do that as a class when you come back. All right, we're going to do one of each of them as a class. And Tiffany, you'll be glad to know that they've now said that the freezing stuff on Friday isn't supposed to start till like 4 in the afternoon. But it is supposed to rain or snow all day. I just think it's kind of weird weather. It's 60 today and then snow 2 days later. I got a friend who lives in Denver, and she says it's the same way. She sends pictures all the time. The snow is 8 feet high and it's 70 degrees outside. That, there though, in Denver, if you ever look on the highway, because I used to have to drive a 75-mile stretch from Denver, Colorado to Fort Collins, Colorado, to go to this facility I was working at, and they always said you could only take this one highway. They said if there's any advisories out, get off. They said they'll literally get a foot in a matter of minutes, and it'll get terrible, and they don't do a good job plowing it. Okay, you had me at hello, as they say. Okay. Number 16. What is a namespace? It's a container. We're starting to look at namespaces with those using statements, but you can also create your own namespaces. I don't know if the book even gets into that or not. I don't remember. If it doesn't, I'll be glad to show it to you, but it's a fairly complex topic that wouldn't be shown probably till the end of the book anyway. Number 17, whoops. What is a comment? You know what a comment is. It's non-executable code. You know, you know what a single line comment is, and you know what a block level comment is. You've used these before. But the big thing is it's non-executing statements. So in other words, the compiler ignores comments. All right, number 18. Thought we already did that one, but that's fine. What is inheritance? It's the ability to extend a class to create a more specific class. Okay, don't know why I'd have it in there twice. probably because it's actually on the test twice. But still, that's kind of stupid anyway for me to do that. All right, so we'll just skip that one and we'll go on to 19. What is included in a method header? Okay, the name, what will be passed into it, what will be returned. Please look up on the screen here. I just want to quickly show you an example of a header. So if you say something like public void add to, let's say, int n1, int n2. So if we had something like this, that's the method name. This here and this here, those are the method parameters. This here is the method return type. This, I said method name, this is called the access specifier. Now, you don't maybe need to know all those for the test. You will for a later test. All right? So it's important that you understand what each one of those components are, and as we go on in here, what each one of them does. Okay? It's similar to what we saw in JavaScript, but not identical, because JavaScript is loosely typed, this is strongly typed, so you have to put the type in there also, int or whatever it happens to be. Yes? Well, what I said was, if you put public, yeah, if you use public, that means that this is available not only within this class, but within any other class. If you say private, it's only available within this class. But there's an intermedium, which is protected, which means it's available to this class and any class that's inherited from this class. And I said if that confuses, you kind of look at it that if somebody's a public figure, supposedly everyone has access to them. If you're a private figure, in other words, technically that's what we all are. You can, I've given this example before. It's kind of a poor one, but technically I should be able to walk into the White House and ask for a meeting with Obama or Trump. All right, that doesn't happen that way, but that's the way it should work with something being public. Being private, you can't do that. All right, number 20. What is a program? It's a set of instructions that tell the computer what to do. What is that set of instructions? That set of instructions is also known as an algorithm. All right? Let me erase what I put up here before I make that harder. And I've said this to you before, but I want to say it again. I always made this joke, not a ha-ha, but about my late grandmother. She could fry dirt and make it taste delicious. She just could. She had that way about her. My mom would get one of my grandmother, her mother-in-law's recipes, and make it the same way, and it would taste like dirt. All right, and I could never understand that because they did it the same way. All right. The reason I'm telling you that is with a computer algorithm, if I run the same algorithm a million times and give it the same input, I should get the exact same output every time. That's the difference between a human algorithm and a computer algorithm. All right. Number 21. What is a variable? I like to say this, it's a named memory location, which holds a value that may or may not vary. Okay? If I'm running a program and I ask Brady for his employee number and he gives it to me, that's probably not going to change, even if I run it 10 years later. But if I ask Brady his age and he gives me his age, in 10 years from now, that will change. So sometimes a variable's value will change, sometimes its value will not change. Typically, when a variable's value does not change, you don't make it a variable, you make it really a special kind of a variable named a constant. And we'll get to that very shortly. right? What's an attribute? Number 22. It represents the features that an object has. What are your attributes? You all have a height, you all have a weight, you all have an eye color, you all have a hair color. Those are attributes. They're sometimes called characteristics. They go by different names. Does everybody remember when I went into the properties window and I changed the back color? Okay, that's an attribute. The form has an attribute that's called back color that allows me to change its color. All right? Most controls that you create have a back color attribute. Number 23, what is polymorphism? Again, we don't get to that till like chapter 10, but the author introduced it in chapter 1. It actually is a Greek word that stands for many forms. Okay? If you remember the example that I gave you, I used animal and I said we define a method called speak, but then if we called it for a dog, it would speak different than for a cat. That would speak different if we called it for a pig. That was the example I gave you yesterday with that. I think the last one that's in here, we'll get to it in a minute, that's all the definitions. I tried to crunch them down so they'd all fit on one screen. All right? Then we're going to take a break, and at 9:15, we're going to do your first end of chapter homework, but we're going to do it as a class. Really won't take very long. Okay, so finally the last one then. All right, it says know these definitions. So that you won't see the know these definitions, but you'll see everything else. That's, oh, I guess they still didn't do it well enough. So hold on a second. Home, 6, format painter, format painter, format painter. That's the best I can get it to fit it all on one screen at once. All right. And I'll leave that up there. Once you get it done, please take a break. It's 9:03. I'm going to start up again at 9:15. So when you come back at 9:15, please get into Visual Studio. You don't have to do anything else, but just get into Visual Studio. So boom, we can start right away. All right? I am going to send you an email during the break just so you know that something that you might want to use in your program. everybody has syntax at least, I'm sure. So that's just the first one. So that'll make should make it easier for you to read. There. Again, if you finished, please take a break. Taking a couple more minutes. So let's say 9:20 we'll start up, but make sure that when we start up, you have Visual Studio started. All right, just have it up. You don't have to start a new project or anything. We're going to do all of this. We're going to do both the problems at the end of the chapter as a class. Is everybody done with this one? And I'll slow number two. I'll go back down if anybody needs it. So. Anybody need any of the other ones that you missed any? The last one? Last one? 32? Okay. Oops. Any other ones anybody needs to see? Number one. Again, if you haven't done so, please start up Visual Studio. If your screen looks like mine up here, that's good. We'll just pick it up from right there. I just sent or emailed all of you the comments that are at the beginning of the problems at the end of the chapter. You might want to use those. I'm going to use them, and if you don't know what I mean, I'll show you in just a minute.